Hi, everyone, and welcome to the True Costs of Self-Publishing webinar. I have included information that I couldn't find anywhere when I was first starting looking at self-publishing, because a lot of what you do when you're considering self-publishing, you do a lot of research, and you search on the internet and they tell you it's going to cost $2,000 based on these things, and you kind of go in thinking that that's how much it's going to cost you, and then it doesn't, and it's more, or you head in the wrong direction and you're like, oh, I didn't mean that. That's not what I thought I was signing up for, and it's not right. And then that money is just gone because you made a mistake. And so, whenever you're trying something new, there are going to be more expenses than if you're already like a pro and you know what to do. So basically, I have worked out all of the expenses that every self-publisher takes on that no one is talking about, because they just focus on like putting the book part together, and they don't think about all the other things that go into creating a book and selling a book and all those other expenses that self-published authors have when they're taking on a book project. So if you are interested in self-publishing your book because you have this great book idea and you know this is what you want to do and you want to get it out there, then this webinar is really going to help you. So let's head over to the slides and let's take a look, and we'll start the webinar. Okay, so here we are, True Costs of Self-Publishing by me, Lisa Furland. So first, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining and taking time out of your day or your evening to be here with me. If you're catching the replay, then thanks for coming back and clicking and logging in, doing all those great things, and taking the time to really sit down and learn something about self-publishing. I guarantee you, you will learn something today. So who am I? I am the indie publisher or self-publisher of the Knocked Up Abroad series, which are 2 anthologies, and I worked with over 50 women to pull these books together. And the reason why I chose self-publishing was because my audience for these books were really specific. I was targeting women who are interested in international stories about pregnancy and birth. And that's not quite large of an audience for a huge traditional publisher to want to take on. And I knew that I could self-publish my book. I knew that I could figure it out, and I had the time, energy, and passion to bring it together. I was also really excited to control my timeline and to control the creative process and to choose my book cover and to do all those cool things that you get to do when you're a self-publisher. And my first book I paid for out of my own pocket, and I was kind of on a budget, and so I made a lot of decisions about what I would do in terms of learning new skills to save money. And when it comes to putting a book together, you're always going to have to weigh your options of, should I spend money on this and save time, or should I save money and spend my time? So it's one or the other. And depending on your interest and expertise, it's going to differ from person to person. Now, my second book, I ended up funding through crowdfunding, and that's a whole other story and approach. But the first book cost around $3,500, and the second book almost $10,000. And the reason why was the second book, with the crowdfunding effort, I was able to pay the contributors a stipend for submitting their chapters into the book, and for including their chapters into the book. Everyone got paid. So I was able to pay my writers, which was excellent, and definitely something that I think all anthology publishers should do. Again, the first book, since it was my first learning experience and I was kind of, scrapping it together and bootstrapping it together to make it work, I wasn't able to pay my writers, which is why the cost of the first book was so much less than the cost of the second book. I also printed and shipped a lot more copies of the second book myself, which goes into some of the costs related to that. But we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of the costs. But before we do that, I want you to really reduce your distractions, limit your distractions, close out of all the other browser tabs right now. Take a minute and just exit out of any chats or messengers or anything that you may have. Put your phone into airplane mode, and also download the Excel spreadsheet so that you can follow along when we get to that point. But if you go ahead and download it now while I'm talking right now in this little before we get started session, then it'll be ready to go on your computer and you can follow along. And also, please stay until the end, because if you are really interested in self-publishing, then I have a great one-time limited offer for you that is really going to help you take your book idea into an actual book that you can hold in your hands, and you'll be so proud of it. So stay until the end for that special offer. All right, so what are we going to learn today? We are going to establish realistic expectations related to the cost of self-publishing. There seems to be this misconception that with all the technology and everything that's out there, that it's really cheap or it's really inexpensive. Maybe cheap is the wrong word to use. It's really inexpensive to publish a book. And it's just not true. There are a lot of aspects of the publishing process. And as a self-publisher, you're taking on every single one of those aspects yourself. And so it's just good to know before you start your project what is a good ballpark range to have in terms of how much one book is going to cost. And after that, you can set your pricing and figure out what your sales need to be to recoup that investment. And we're not going to talk about all of that because making money selling books is a whole other discussion when we get into marketing and pricing and all that kind of stuff. But first, you need to figure out the cost. That's really where you need to start. We're also going to look at how you can evaluate these third-party cost claims. So when you are finished with this webinar, you can go and Google and look at blogs and other articles yourself and look and see, okay, did they include this or this? No, okay, I need to make sure I add that in. And the Excel spreadsheet is really going to help you do that so that you don't need another blog to tell you what it is. You can if you want to gather more information, but really I'm going to give you all the tools you need to be able to figure it out yourself so that you can create a budget for your book. This will also help you figure out what aspects you might want to do yourself. So like I said earlier, I was really strict on my budget for my first book. So a lot of the things I ended up doing myself because I didn't have the extra $800 to put towards hiring an expert to do it for me. I did have the time. I did have a week to learn and study and figure out what to do, and then 2 weeks to do the process. So I had the time to invest in the process, and then I kind of became skilled at it. And then I was like, okay, I'm willing to invest the time in myself to learn this new skill, and I will save money in doing that because I will take ownership of the process and then I'll know how to do it. I do understand that not everyone has the time to do that. And so there will be some aspects that you want to do yourself, and there will be some aspects that you are going to want to hire out. Again, depending on your interest and your time and your existing expertise. Maybe you are already a graphic designer. That's great. Then you don't need to hire out that part of the process, but we're going to talk about that. And then you're going to set your no surprises budget using the Excel spreadsheet that you have downloaded. All right. So this is a reality check, and it's good to know how much this is going to cost. Is it going to be a lot or a little? I don't know. Well, a lot or a little is totally subjective. What's affordable to one person might be unaffordable to another. But let's all agree that the first time we do anything, it's probably going to be the most expensive because there are some setup costs that we have to do on the first go round. So your first book, and I say your first book because I'll get to that in a minute. Your first book will be the most expensive investment because you have all those things. Once those one-time investments are made, then it kind of goes into maintenance mode and it becomes more affordable over time and with subsequent books. Now, again, I'm saying multiple books because really the best way to sell one book is to publish another book, which, you know, a lot of people are like, let me focus on one book at a time, which is great. So let's look at our one-time investments. You can invest in courses. You can invest in software. You can invest in website design. That actually that falls under both, you know, sort of ongoing and one-time investment. But let's just say you do a big design and then you are able to maintain it on the side. So your first book is going to be the most expensive. And when it comes to publishing actual books, ebooks are the cheapest in terms of the costs related to putting out an ebook. Then next come paperbacks in terms of cost. And then, of course, hardcovers. Hardcovers cost more when it comes to printing and shipping. So of all of those, the largest portion of your budget is going to go towards editing and cover design. That's just how it goes. And again, there's always a trade-off where you can save money, but you're going to spend more time. Or you can save time, but spend money. So it depends on what you want to do and what works for your budget and your time constraints. And of course, actual costs incurred are highly variable. I do not know how much it will cost for you to put your book together, because there are so many different ways you could go. You can take the Cadillac version, or you can take sort of the bare bones version. That's up to you. And that's why you have the Excel spreadsheet, so you can calculate what type of version you're going to have. But first, let's do some research. So if you plug in just into Google, average cost of self-publishing a book, this is what you get back. You don't have to hop out of this webinar because I did it for you. You get 1.5 million results. Okay. And not all of those results are helpful. There are some that are, pretty high level. And there are some calculators that are offered by small printing presses, so you can calculate how much it's going to be to print a book through their service. There are a lot of websites that offer a blog about costs because they are selling you their publishing services. But the one thing that none of them address, they still don't address all of the costs that you are going to incur. And that is really because when you are a self-published author, you are a small business owner. You are an entrepreneur. And I know that that doesn't really go hand in hand initially when you think about it, but that's exactly what you're doing. You are creating a product and then you are going to be selling it. When we first think about a book, we think about, oh, I'm a writer, or I'm an editor, or I'm an anthology creator. I'm putting other people's stories together. But really, we're creating a product and then selling it. That makes you an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs have business costs that come when it comes to running a business. And so a lot of these calculators only factor in the cost that it takes to publish a book. They don't think about all the other parts that are associated with creating a small business and selling a product. And that's what we're going to get into. Okay, so one of the top websites that comes up is from therightlife.com. And the range is from this blog, 150 to 1650. And it was from interviews with 4 authors. Now, a lot of the issues I have with this is that, number one, is a small sample size. By training, I'm an epidemiologist, and I would never take a sample of 4 to kind of provide this general, this is how much it costs to self-publish a book. Second of all, they bartered services for most of their costs. And so the value of those bartered services wasn't factored in. So the person who said it cost me $150, it's because she traded her editing service for cover design, or vice versa. I'm not sure. But she bartered her services and her skills with her network. And a lot of them did the aspects on their own. But again, these weren't factored in as value. It was just, it was cheap for me to do. And then throughout the interview, it becomes clear that these are not these authors' first books. This is not their first go round. This is not the first time they have done the interior typesetting of a book. And so all of these things, it's just a wildly inaccurate range. I mean, if this is your 9th book, sure, it may cost you $150, but you have already spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars publishing your first 8 books. So it's completely misleading to, a newbie like me who's researching how much it's going to cost. And if I went into this thinking that the upper range I was going to spend was $1,650, I'm in for a rude awakening. But they all mentioned that their biggest expenses were editing and cover design. So that should just give you an idea so that you don't have sticker shock when you're looking at hiring an editor or cover design. Understand that's going to be the bulk of your expense. Okay, so now we head over to Reedsy.com. They also have cost to self-publish a book, and they rank pretty high in the Google search results. And I like their pool better. They have 700 professionals, and these are from the quotes that those professionals have given. So these are not actual costs incurred by writers necessarily, but these are the quotes that their editing and cover design professionals are giving their clients. The numbers are better. The N is better. Sample size is much larger, 10,000 plus quotes. Okay, thank you for that. So editing, the range is anywhere from 350 to 1,700 with an average of around 1,000. Cover design is 400 to 800 with average cost at around 650. And then book interior design typesetting is 500 to 1,000 with the average cost around $830. And they say, you know, if you add up the average costs of these three elements, you get $2,500. Now, the Right Life said anywhere from 150 to 1,650, and now here we're at 2,500. The problem with Reedsy is that their estimates still only cover 3 aspects of the publishing process. There's so much more to it than that. This leaves out the author and platform expenses, printing and shipping, all the marketing you're going to do. So, okay. So no matter what book you publish, you're going to need to cover ISBN costs, barcode, editor, proofreader, graphic designer, formatting, layout, and printed proofs. Okay, these are just very, very basic. This is kind of assuming that you know what you're doing and you already have things laid out. You can't really get much more bare bones than this. You can create your own barcode. I've discovered that recently, so you can do that for free. So that's going to save you around $25, but really that's not going to put a dent in your overall budget. If we expand out, we have other costs. We have headshots, because if you want your face on a book, maybe you don't, but if you want your face on LinkedIn, a professional headshot would be nice, your face on your website. So you're going to need a professional picture of you that's not, you know, a selfie on your cell phone. And that's going to cost money. You're going to have a website host. I recommend SiteGround, but there are lots of others. There's Bluehost and I don't know, a ton of website hosts, but you need to have an author platform somewhere where you can sell the books or people can find you and learn more. It can be very simple. And again, it ranges in expense to how simple you want it to be to how expensive or fancy you want it to be. But you are going to factor in these costs when it comes to setting up your, again, a small business or entrepreneurship. You need a website provider, either WordPress or Square or another one, up to you. Again, decide what you want, but there are costs related to that. And then a domain name, you know, go ahead, invest. They're not expensive. I think my domain name was like $16 a year. Just go ahead and purchase that. Also, logo design. It's nice if you do want to incorporate your small indie publisher and have like an official name. You might want an official logo to go along with it. That's cool. You are going to need a PO box for newsletter purposes because this is required by anti-spam law. You can't just send out emails to your readers without having an actual address that people can send mail to. So if you don't want to put your home address there because you're afraid of stalkers or I don't know, you're going to need a PO box. I live in Sweden and PO boxes are around $250 a year. But that's, you know, that's a business expense. That's part of doing business. And okay, I recommend a Grammarly subscription. And this is where I kind of get into some recommendations here. I recommend a Grammarly subscription because it will help you save on editing costs. And I also recommend Scrivener or InDesign software, which you can use for interior layout or design. Again, you don't need to do it, but this is what I recommend. And then, of course, you need money for marketing. There are going to be lots of costs when it comes to promoting and selling your book, letting people know that it is out there. Okay, so a simple budget. And you'll see this is pretty similar to Reedsy's. Simple budget, ISBN, buy the 10-pack, barcode, $25 each, editor, proofreader, cover design, formatting, layout, and then printed proofs. I would say you can't really get much cheaper than that other than, you know, $2,600 some odd dollars and up, depending on how much you want to spend on all those pieces. An expanded budget. This is where we talk about, setting up your website, setting up your author platform, filing copyright, if you have illustrations, and all those other things. Depending on where you print, if you print through Ingram Spark, they have a title setup fee. All of those things. You're looking at $4,740 and up. All right. So when we actually look at the cost breakdown, there's a lot, the website is by far your least expensive portion of the pie. So go ahead and set that up. That's going to be a worthwhile investment because it establishes an online presence and people can find you and all that good stuff. Then, of course, you see the next two biggest pieces of the pie are editing and marketing, which makes total sense. And these are things that are non-negotiable. You're going to have to market it in some way. And of course, the amount you want to spend on marketing varies, but there are always costs associated with that. And you just can't get around that. All right, there are also hidden expenses. Ooh, fun. Love it. But if you want to travel to a book event or you've booked speaking engagements, there are going to be costs associated with getting there. Now, when you're an indie author, depending on your platform, you may be heading out to speaking engagements on your own and hoping that the, raising awareness and driving sales to your book will be enough. Others, depending on who's listening, may be booked for speaking engagements and you may be able to book paying gigs, in which case, hopefully they're covering your costs of travel. But either way, I like to frequent my indie bookstores, and that costs money because I have to head in there and pay for parking and do all that kind of stuff. And I know you're telling me, like, Lisa, that's such a small fee. That's such a small cost, but it adds up. And if you're doing lots of events in, locally, or you're traveling by car, all of those expenses add up. Again, these are things people don't think about. Over the course of years and years, you are spending money doing this. There's also promotional swag. If you want to make postcards or bookmarks, or you want a tote bag or anything else to kind of help, build buzz around your book or encourage people to buy your book, that costs money. Again, it's not a lot, but it does cost. Also, social media promotion. If you're going to pay for ads on social media, Facebook or Instagram, all those things, factor that into your marketing budget. Logo design, business cards, review copies. This is something that people don't really think about, but when you are, trying to get your book out, you need to send your book for free to a lot of people. And don't be afraid to send it for free to people. I mean, you're going to send it to influencers and people who are writers in your genre who you admire and who agree to take a look at your book and maybe write a review on their website or share their book with their network. Anything that you can do. And so all of that costs money. Again, it might not be a lot, but when you start multiplying that by the number of people you send it out to, it could be a few $100s. And then, of course, there's shipping and packaging and, tax software. If you don't already have business software or bookkeeping, you are setting up a small business, you need to figure that out. And there will be, minimal to moderate cost regarding your daily bookkeeping for your business. All right. So my suggestion, and this is sort of where I fall into my non-negotiables, is that there are some things when I'm weighing how much to spend versus how much to save and do myself, I will not venture into the area of cover design. That is not my strength. And I know that an ugly book is not going to sell. It's just not, and it's not worth it to me. I would rather invest $500 to $1,000 in my book covers in order to get them onto the bookshelf. And then also something that's non-negotiable is hiring a professional proofreader or copy editor. Yes, I know English. Yes, I am a native speaker and I know grammar and I have a manual style guide, but that does not mean that I won't be exhausted or make a mistake or miss something that a professional proofreader, an extra set of eyes will catch. And I absolutely require this of, everyone I work with, is that they have to hire a professional proofreader or a copy editor before publishing their book, because grammatical mistakes are not only embarrassing, but then you lose your reader's trust. You know, when I'm reading a book and I catch a mistake like that, I instantly think like, whoops, they missed this. What else did they miss? And you can kind of lose your expert status. So if you are looking at publishing a book to sell in the back of the room after you give a lecture, your book has to be perfect. And we all make mistakes, and that's fine. That's why we hire extra eyes to take a look at it. Okay, so let's pause here for a moment, and I'm going to open up the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so let's take a look at the Excel spreadsheet, and you can follow along on the screen with me, or you can work through the spreadsheet yourself. But basically, I kept it very simple, and I put in placeholders of various expenses that you might experience, and you are totally free to use this however you want. So let's say you already have ISBNs. If you already have ISBNs, take them out. Just delete them or zero them out based on what you want, or update the price to reflect your expenditures, or update the currency if the currency is not what you want. Use this however you want. This is your tool to use so that you can calculate the budget for your book. So the first section, we have the book content, which we go over expenses related to ISBNs, barcodes, editing, all of that. And I have the estimated cost per unit just using the average costs that we already went over. You can insert your actual expenditures in column E, which is next to your estimated subtotal, so that you can keep track of how much it is going to cost you. And again, this isn't any type of calculator you can use to submit for your taxes or anything, but this is for your own personal use so that you can just track your budget and see how you are doing, or if you need to reallocate resources somewhere else. And we cover the book content and the website, as well as other costs that you might run into. And then we get into a little bit of marketing regarding product giveaways or discounts and promotional swag, shipping and packaging, any of that kind of stuff. What I would do if I were you, and this is up to you, but I would sort of add an oops factor into each part of the budget. So if I just go here and type in oops factor 1, and I'm just going to add in a percentage. And generally they say, you know, like if you have 10% oops, that would be good. So 10% of this is 330. I'm just going to go there and add that in, because I want to make sure that I am totally factoring in everything I can. So oops factor 175. And then you just kind of make sure that no matter what, your budget is all set. Okay, so you can do that yourself if you want. If you don't want to factor in oops factor because you're a budgeting expert, then don't worry about that. But I like to give myself a little cushion and a little leeway so that there are no surprises when we get down to the end. Now, of course, you are going to modify this however you need and start putting in, you know, your actual expenditures. So for example, if you already have ISBNs or you purchased them already, or you just want to do it one at a time, let's say you want to purchase one at a time and you decide not to buy the 10-pack. I believe it's around $125 if you don't buy the 10-pack at $295. So then that means that your one ISBN was not $29.50, it was $125. But you get a free barcode because you do it yourself. You find the free online barcode generator and you save money there. Let's say you have a friend who does editing for you and your page count is less than what you thought. And so instead of 1,000, it is 750. Interior layout and formatting, let's say it was around the same. Cover design was around the same. And you can just sort of put in your values here and you can see, let's say you don't have any illustrators or contributors and your book printing, everything was around the same. Okay, and then your oops factor, you didn't really need it. You can see there how your new budget is updating based on the math in here. If you do add any additional rows, you're going to need to adjust the calculations behind the scenes. So just make sure that you Excel properly and use the tool properly. Otherwise, the calculator won't work. That's easy enough to do. I don't know if you're skilled at Excel, but if you are, you just make sure that it covers all of the cells that you want. You can drag up and down accordingly. Let me just show you. Now you can make sure if it's there, you just want to drag it down and do that. Okay, so that's pretty easy enough to do. Don't worry about that. And then down here, you'll see that it adds up your actual expenditures and you can see how much you have left in the budget. So it's a good way to track your expenses as you go. All right, that is the Excel spreadsheet. Again, you are free to use that however best suits you. So now we understand how to design the budget using the Excel spreadsheet. And also we understand, what the costs are related to self-publishing, and that a lot of self-publishing costs are costs that every entrepreneur faces. And so we can really plan out our strategy in terms of how much it's going to cost and then how much we can set to generate revenue for our book. So there are a lot of things we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about how long each step of the process takes. So each step of the process has a value number associated with it because that's what you would pay someone to do it for you. But how long would it take for you to do it yourself if you wanted to save that money? And we didn't really talk about what steps of the process are worth your time versus worth your money to invest in an expert. So should you DIY something or should you hire somebody? We didn't really talk about exactly those steps of the process. And we didn't cover all the free resources that are available out there or the tools that you definitely should purchase. And we didn't talk about how to successfully price your book so that you're not paying someone to sell your book. And we didn't talk about the best way to launch your book for success. So there are a lot of things that we didn't cover. We were just talking about costs. But if you are interested in that, and you are ready to keep learning, I have developed a very comprehensive course called The Beginner's Guide to Self-Publishing. And we cover everything related to self-publishing, and it's 4.5 hours of instruction and 20 lessons.
If you are interested in learning more about the Beginner's Guide to Self-Publishing, you can head over to a website that has the course curriculum and testimonials from other students, and you can always send me an email if you have any questions. And hopefully you will find lisafurlan.com a great resource to help you along the way.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you are super pumped and ready to get going and get your book going. And my thank you for coming to this webinar. I really am so grateful for you. And I can't wait for you to get your book started. I know that you can do it. And this course will help boost your confidence and will really take your book to the next level. Okay, so see you there. Feel free to send me an email if you have any questions at all. Okay, bye.